SkyGuardian, you share it's time to read from the Vachanamrut. Yes. We can read from a passage. Here we're going from unbridled fun to some spiritual fun, sometimes with clear directives to observe religious vows. Oh, this one will be fun. So let me fill you all in. Sometimes we like to read a passage, a short passage from this spiritual text called the Vachanamrut. Today we're reading Gadhadā 157. This passage is called the most extraordinary means to attain liberation. I'm excited. On Phagun Sudi II, Samvat 1876, or the 15th of February 1820, Sriji Maharaj, whom is the one giving the discourses in this book, was sitting in the residential area of the sadhus, the monks, in Dada Kachar's darbar in Gadhadā. He was dressed entirely in white clothes. At that time, an assembly of sadhus, as well as devotees from various places, had gathered before him. Then, Sriji Maharaj said, "Those of you who know how to engage in a question-answer dialogue may ask one question each." Thereupon, Muktanand Swami asked, "Maharaj, what is the most extraordinary means of attaining liberation?" Muktanand Swami then asked another question. Oh, this was after Sriji Maharaj replied, "The knowledge of God's form and the knowledge of God's glory are the two extraordinary means to attain liberation." Muktanand Swami then asked another question. What is the nature of love towards God? Sriji Maharaj answered, "The nature of true love is that it should not entertain any type of logical conditions. If, however, one develops love by logically thinking of God's virtues, then when one perceives flaws in God, one's love towards Him will be broken. So, it is best to leave such affection as it was originally, rather than repeatedly establish it and then raise doubts about it. Instead, one should develop affection towards God with blind faith. After all, affection developed by logically thinking of God's virtues cannot be trusted." Isn't that interesting? Something developed by logic cannot be trusted. Therefore, one should develop the same type of affection towards God as one has for one's bodily relations. This affection is known as affection due to blind faith. Having said this, though, love developed by realizing God's glory is of a totally different nature altogether. Thereafter, Shivanand Swami asked, "Although one has an intense yearning to stay in the Satsang fellowship, the assembly of true spiritual seekers, why is it that some inappropriate swabhavs are still not eradicated? Very deep kinds of sentiments, of mentalities." Sriji Maharaj explained, "If a person has not developed an aversion for the type of swabhav that hinders them in satsang, how can they be said to have an intense yearning for satsang?" Satsang literally means true association. If we're still associating with that which is untrue, our vices, how can that be satsang? And how can they be said to have realized that swabhav to be their arch enemy? For example, if a friend of yours were to kill your brother, your friendship with them would no longer remain. Instead, you would be prepared to cut off his head. Why? Because the relationship with one's brother is closer than that with one's friend. Likewise, a person may have a swabhav that causes them to break their religious or spiritual vows and disciplines and fall from satsang, associating with such beings. If, despite this, they still do not harbor any feelings of enmity towards it, and does not develop bitterness towards it, then they do not have total affection for satsang. On the other hand, if their affection for satsang is like the affection one has for one's brother, then they would shun that detrimental swabhav immediately. After all, the jiva, the individual, is extremely powerful. The mind and indriyas, the senses, are merely the kshetra, the field, whereas the jiva is their kshetragna, their knower, the knower of the field, the witness. It can achieve whatever it attempts. So, thank you for listening, my friends. Thus we have come to the end of Gadhadā 157 on the most extraordinary means for attaining liberation. A nice little interim and a nice transition from what we were talking about earlier.